noticed a woman appeared to me who's an orthopedic surgeon. She's a reserved and quiet lady. She broke her leg and couldn't walk anymore. Furthermore, she was in a condition that even a colleague of mine who always looked down on me couldn't treat. I had my doubts, but she was the one who should be feeling anxious. I faced her conditions, and together, we tried to work things out with some treatment. Little did I know at that time, this encounter would change my life in a whole different way. My name is Terry Johnson. I'm a 30-year-old orthopedic surgeon. I work at a large hospital, so many patients come in through referrals. I'm busy every day, but I have a little problem. That problem is the presence of my colleague, Matt Adams. There's another orthopedic surgeon at my workplace, and that's Matt. He's an arrogant man who values educational backgrounds and often belittles me, who didn't graduate from a top-tier medical school, calling me incompetent. He even calls me incompetence like it's my nickname. In the US, there's a shortage of doctors, and there are many connections and factions among us. Perhaps it's understandable to be elitist because of this, but Matt is just too blatant. Sure, Matt is brilliant, and from his perspective, I might be close to being incompetent. But if you start saying that, then about half of the doctors in the hospital would be deemed incompetent. Matt and I run the orthopedics department of the hospital. This time, a slightly complicated patient is coming. Apparently, the daughter of some prominent figure or professor that Matt is close to is visiting our place today. It seems no doctor was specifically requested, but Matt seemed eager to take the case, saying she fractured a right thigh in an accident and can't walk. Well, if she's treated by someone as skilled as me, she'll recover quickly. They'll owe me one. Telling me the symptoms was probably just a minimum information sharing and a way to hint that I shouldn't interfere. From my point of view, I feel he should prioritize the patient's well-being. Matt is competent, so he should be fine. With that thought, I focused on examining my other patients. However, it seems Matt's treatment wasn't going as planned. Given that the patient is young, she should heal quickly, and it seems the bone mostly mended after about a month. But apparently, she still can't walk. She keeps insisting her leg hurts, and given that she can undergo some rehab when taking painkillers, her complaints are probably genuine. But the main injury seems to have mostly healed, and it doesn't seem like something that would prevent her from walking.
Hey, man! What's going on? Why, Jin? Why can't she walk? Is it psychological trauma? Yes?
I've heard Matt muttering this numerous times, and it's gotten me quite worried. Matt is arrogant and has a high pride, which has gotten him into trouble with patients on multiple occasions. He tends to clash especially with patients who are wary or don't go along with his prescribed treatments. While I'd expect Matt not to behave this way with a prominent figure's daughter, there's a real risk he could lash out at other patients. So, seeing Matt frustrated and confused, I hesitantly suggested if it's psychological trauma, maybe it'd be better to refer her to a counselor. It could be the shock from the accident.
Son, don't tell me to you what to do. You incompetent. I'm leagues above you.
It's not something that started just now, but I really do think he's incredibly stubborn. That stubbornness is necessary at times, but it seems to have gotten in the way this time. Turns out, a patient under Matt's care was transferred to me. Apparently, the patient's parents, seeing their daughter unable to walk for so long, requested another orthopedic surgeon to take a look if there was one available immediately. This seemed to have deeply wounded Matt's pride, and he was pretty livid. But at the end of the day, providing medical care is a service profession. The patient always comes first. It was here where I first met her, to me. She's 21 years old. She got injured in a collision with a motorcycle on her way to school, and even a month and a half after the accident. Though her wounds have healed, she still can't walk. Recently, she's been going through physical therapy with painkillers. But those medications can be hard on the body, and it's not ideal to take them for a long time. She had an x-ray taken with me again, but I couldn't find any issues that would prevent her from walking. So, I decided to listen to what she had to say. I'm not a counselor, so I can't fully understand a patient's feelings. But the one who knows a patient best is the patient themselves. Your leg hurts, doesn't it? Does it hurt now?
When I try to walk, explosions eyes and my patient's edges.
She said hesitantly, her gaze wandering. She seems really shy, and when someone like her encounters a dominant doctor like Matt, they might just go along with the treatment without voicing their concerns. She probably always agrees without expressing her own opinion. them in Matt's nature. I suspect that after the initial diagnosis, he relied on data rather than the patient's voice to decide what treatment she needed. It's not inherently a wrong approach. Sometimes patients have misconceptions and the real issue lies elsewhere. I mentioned earlier that the patient knows best, but we doctors need to identify any misconceptions or contradictions. Matt relied on data for his diagnosis, and it didn't work out. So, I'll make sure to include the patient's voice in my decision-making process. From our earlier conversation, she indicated that her leg doesn't hurt unless she's putting weight on it, suggesting that the pain might be due to stress or strain. I decided to accompany her to physical therapy. I wanted to observe how she attempts to stand or move from a doctor's perspective. Of course, detailed guidance would be given by the PD specialist, and I wouldn't interfere with that. Timidly, with a little help. Amy bent to stand up, but she sat down immediately saying, "My foot hurts." I mumble, from the x-ray of her thigh bone. She looked perfectly healthy. This means the cause could be somewhere other than the thigh, or it might be a muscular or neural issue. But even if that's the case, there's weight applied when sitting, so there could be pain when trying to stand up. Should I check all possible causes meticulously? Lost in these thoughts, my gaze fell on her foot. That's when I noticed something. Her big toe was bent inward. I must fapidai. I gotta ask, were you born with a bunion? A bunionin is when the big toe deforms and bends inward. There are two types, congenital, and the one caused by wearing narrow shoes. Amy had the former, the congenital type. And here, I realized our big misunderstanding. She said her foot hurt, but we mistakenly thought she meant her thigh. For us medical professionals, we know there's a distinction between foots and legs, but to the average person, it can all be referred to as the tiwi foot. And truth be told, Amy initially did complain about her thigh hurting. After all, it's broken. But we believed the only fracture was in the thigh, so we didn't take an x-ray of the foot. The drawback with x-rays is you can't capture the whole body at once. You have to be specific about where you're looking. So we were focused on her thigh, not taking a foot x-ray. But when I took an x-ray of her foot, there was a small but definite fracture. Small as it was, it hadn't been properly set, and she had even started rehabilitation. So the bone still wasn't healed. One thing I want to clarify is diagnosing fractures can be really tough. Small ones can easily be overlooked. At first, it might seem like a bruise, but if the pain persists, another x-ray might reveal a fracture. It happens more often than you'd think. In Amy's case, the injury to her thigh was so severe that the small crack in her foot went unnoticed. There's also a minor fracture in the foot, and I suspect the pain might also be from bunions, so once the fracture heals, we should correct the bunion too.
Understood. Must ask people.
She nods. After that, she started her foot treatment, and the fracture treatment was successfully completed. While surgery is an option for bunions, they can improve significantly with the right kind of support and a change of shoes. So there was a process of fitting with a support brace. But for some reason, it seemed that Amy struggled to voice her opinions, trusting mostly just me. Usually, the adjustment of such braces is done by the nurses, but since she seemed more comfortable expressing her needs to me, I took charge. I was checking if she felt any discomfort with the brace on.
How about here? Is it too tight?
Me just crying. It's a bit loose.
It's essential to wear the brace correctly, or its effectiveness diminishes. I was guiding her on how to wear it properly, but since it was her first time using a brace, there were some challenges.
What about this part? Should I tighten it a bit?
No, not that. So fast as me.
Suddenly she raised her voice, though she generally spoke softly, so it wasn't very loud. It seemed I had tightened it too much.
I'm sorry, did I make it too tight? Would you like to try adjusting it yourself?
At T-Burst, it's easy. I'll do it. Great while.
Apparently, when I tried, it became too tight for her. In the end, she started adjusting it herself. Thankfully, this helped her get used to handling the brace, and she could put it on by herself. Thanks to the brace, the pain from her bunion eased, and little by little, she began to push herself more in her rehabilitation. It took some time, but she managed to walk properly. She's a bit shy but seemed diligent and hardworking. Once the pain was gone, she actively participated in her rehab sessions. She seemed to have a low pain tolerance and was a bit scared. Well, pain is something we all fear, so it's understandable.
Auntie Johnson, Thank you so much.
Questions on the last day of rehab. She stood firmly on her own 2 feet and gave a bow to both me and Matt. Today we had a VIP. Well, her father was also there, expressing his gratitude to the both of us. But it was clear that I was getting more of the credit. He probably heard about me from Amy.
Thanks, you guys. My daughter can walk again. The illness appears and Ducky. I knew I could count on the exceptional Dr. Adams and the son of Dr. Johnson, Connect. I knew I made the right decision in trusting hurting you.
Amy's parents said as they departed, but Matt looked as if he'd been struck by lightning.
Wait. Didn't you say Dr. Johnson signed me to say?
Yeah, keep that under wraps for me, okay? If it gets out, it's going to be a hassle. The reason why Matt's eyes are wide open. It must be about my parents. Both of my parents are quite renowned surgeons, but I didn't want to just follow the path they laid out for me, so I chose the university by myself. If people knew about my parents, they'd have certain expectations, and I didn't want that. Hence the secrecy. But it seems Amy's father somehow found out. If you find out that the person you called incompetent turns out to be the son of renowned doctors, well, it's no wonder you'd be shocked.
Please, ask him. I beg your registers. Ask the nod. I'll tell your parents about me.
Matt lowered his head as if he was about to deeply bow to me. Seeing Matt so distressed, I assured him if you've learned anything from this, stop trying to pull rank with your education. You're a skilled doctor after all. I told him just like that. In reality, the success of treating Amy had a lot to do with Matt. Matt might have missed the fractured bone on her foot, but he diligently checked everything else. Thanks to that, I was able to accurately pinpoint the fracture. Without Matt, I surely would have taken much longer to identify the root cause. When a diagnosis takes too long and additional tests are needed, it's both costly and mentally taxing for the patient. So it wasn't that Matt misdiagnosed, and it wasn't solely my success either. I guess being the shy person she is. Amy found it hard to express her own opinions. That's something Matt should reflect upon and improve. There was a lot I learned from this situation, and I found myself feeling grateful to Amy. And then, unexpectedly, I met Amy again 3 years later, straight at a matchmaking date of all places. She was 24 and I was 33. Neither of us was seeing anyone. I've been thinking it's about time I consider settling down given my age, but I never imagined the woman in the photo would be Amy. She had transformed into a composed, refined, beautiful woman with long black hair.
I thought she was someone else with the same name, but when she said, "It's such a coincidence," at the meeting, I sure with Amy.
Really? Your leg? Oh, it's already been 3 years. It's been 3 years.
Yes, I've recovered fully that I can run now thanks to you two.
She said with a slight smile. She's still reserved, but her quiet smile made her incredibly beautiful, and I couldn't help but fall for her. The innocent look she had during rehab was gone, but now she had a mature, seductive beauty that any man would fall for. But apparently, she'd had several unsuccessful matchmakings.
My superstition is that I don't talk much. They say I seem boring. I should bother.
She said with a hint of sadness in her smile. When I met her 3 years ago, I thought she was quiet and reserved, and that hasn't changed. But men are not great at reading the room, so many probably felt uneasy with her reserved nature.
I like both quiet and lively people, I said.
Brace done and free, brace spare days.
You don't need to force yourself to talk. I don't mind a calm atmosphere, and women like you are rare. It's actually a unique experience.
I felt embarrassed hearing my own words.
And it might seem pleased, smiling. Maybe it'll work out with you.
She said that to me. And with that, we began our relationship and eventually got married. We dated for a year, often going to places like movies or art galleries. She was quiet and reserved, but that's not the case anymore.
Hey, what do you first? Tripped. You were playing again without doing your homework.
Amy's voice echoes once more today.
At the same time, I catch a glimpse of our son, shoot about with our scene, Shastif, with Jacob exclaiming, "Oh no," as he bolts away.
Born to us. Jacob has a sharp wit like Amy, yet he's always up to mischief. which is a handful. The once quiet Amy couldn't stay silent anymore, and our daily life became a lot more bustling after he was born. Honestly, it's a level of noise I could never have imagined since the day I met Amy. But I don't mind it.
Listen up. If you score below D on the next test, even Dad won't play with you anymore.
An angry Amy is scary, so I'd better join in and help her side. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble too later. She's got me whipped now. I'll tell you, they say moms are tough, and that's absolutely true.
But I don't get it. This is impossible to solve.
It's not impossible. I will help you out, so let's get that homework done today.
Amy just shrugged and watched the conversation with a good grief expression. Even with the struggles of parenting, Amy is a stunning, beautiful mom. I can't help but be smitten by her.
Seeing this, our son teased. Daddy's staring at Mommy again?
That got both Amy and me blushing. How did you like that story? Subscribing to the channel really motivates us to produce more content. See you in the next video. My name is Johnson. I was just an ordinary guy in his 30s, working a 9-to-5 job in the city. Now I'm working at a factory in a remote place in rural Nebraska where even buses rarely come. What am I talking in the past tense? Well, up until last month, I was working hard in a prestigious office building in New York City and was on the fast track to success. Everyone believed I was going to make it big, and I had no doubt that I'd be in an executive position one day. However, I had a rival. His name was Mike, and he and I were always competing for the top sales spot. I thought we could have a friendly rivalry, thinking we could build a good relationship. But Mike didn't see it that way. As to him, I was just an obstacle he wanted out of the way, so he set me up. He pinned a huge mistake on me. Even though it was later discovered to be a misunderstanding, the trust I had once earned was lost. Gradually, everyone began distancing themselves from me, and the boss only favored Mike. Before I knew it, I was transferred to this backwoods factory in Nebraska. It was on paper, I'm the factory manager, which is a respectable position, but it's still a demotion. Honestly, it was a shock. Factory managers who are transferred from the HHU get bad reputations. Plus, I have no experience in factory work, so I can't do my job properly. I was labeled as a problematic boss who was transferred because of issues in the main office. Sigh. I returned to my company, provided house with a heavy heart. The pay isn't too bad. Being a factory manager and living in company housing means I can save more money, but the sense of fulfillment is gone. Every day, I just bow to the experienced factory workers and try to handle tasks I've never done before without any guidance. Honestly, it's tough, and I've thought about quitting, but if I quit, it would mean that I lost to Mike. I absolutely hate that thought, so I'm clinging to this job. But I must have been really tired. I realized I left my front door unlocked.
I got to lock it.
There's nothing valuable in my place to steal, but still, I was careless. I went inside thinking that I should be more careful. But what I saw was beyond my wildest expectations, a real shocker. Lo and behold, there were a woman's shoes, just thrown off haphazardly. Not just that, there's a washing machine right next to the entrance, and some woman's clothes were carelessly thrown over it. It looked like she was going to put them in the machine, but got distracted halfway. And beyond the washing machine, in the corridor, are they stockings? Just laid out almost like signposts. Seeing the women's clothes, I hurriedly checked my apartment number. Did I get the wrong room? But no, this is definitely unit 305, the one I'm renting. So what the heck is going on? Get confused. In the bathroom area, a woman was lying down. I couldn't understand what was happening. I checked the apartment number again. It's no mistake. This is my apartment. And the woman, was she unconscious? No, she seemed to sleep. Why was a woman sleeping here? Kuskiwe. I can't just let someone lie here, or I might be suspected of something. I thought so, but then I was like, wait, what? I realized something right there. Her face was extremely pale. She's breathing heavily, and seems to be in pain. The moaning woman showed no sign of getting up, so I cautiously approached her. She looks to be in her early 20s. She seemed familiar. She works at the same factory as I do. Thanks upon a closer look, her face is pale yet she appears to be burning up. Touching her cheek, it's scorching hot. She seems to be really unwell, probably running a fever. When one has a fever, they can feel out of it. And she probably tried to change and collapsed midway. I've experienced it before. When you have a fever, every ounce of energy goes into resting. I remember coming home, only washing my hands and collapsing on my bed. I covered her with my jacket and then gently shook her shoulder.
Hey, are you okay?
Despite the chaos earlier, I was surprisingly calm now. She looked so young to me. There are no teenagers working at our factory. So, I knew she's in her 20s, but she looked so young that she could easily be mistaken for a college student. Seeing her in that state, I was more concerned about her well-being than anything else. Especially given that she couldn't even recognize that she was in the wrong room. She must have been really ill. If she had been dressed, I would have called an ambulance without a second thought. After calling out to her several times, she finally came to. She looked at me dazed, and our eyes met. When I pointed it out, she slowly grasped the situation. Buzzins can't blame her. As I worried, I asked the woman, now known as Mary, about what happened. She said her room was 205. She probably got on the wrong floor when she took the elevator and being dizzy from the fever. She entered my room, which I had forgotten to lock. The apartment complex has the same layout for everyone, and neither Mary nor I leave much of anything in the hallway. So tired, Mary took a short nap without noticing the change in the room. It seems that Mary entered my room about 10 minutes before I got back. I thought she had passed out, but she was just taking a break.
I'm really sorry. I can't believe I...
Do you want me to call an ambulance? You seem pretty out of it.
No. I don't want to cause any more trouble. It's just a cold, and calling an ambulance seems a bit much.
She tried to stand up, but she was wobbly and unsteady. You live alone in the apartment complex, right? I can't send you home alone at night in this condition. You don't have to if you don't want to, but maybe you should rest a bit. Given her unsteady state, even Mary herself felt the danger. She decided to take a break in my room. It is understandable to be nerve-wracking if you are in a stranger's room when you wake up. I don't have any ulterior motives, but to help her relax a bit. I placed my cell phone right in front of her. I didn't take any photos or anything like that. If you're worried, you can check the saved photos. It's okay.
That sounds even more suspicious.
Chuckling awkwardly, I handed her a thermometer to check her temperature. It read 102 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a high fever. She might need to rest as soon as possible. I decided to take her home as her dizziness subsided and she became a bit more lucid. It's just one floor below though.
Thank you so much. I'll come by to thank you properly another day.
She said politely before heading back to her room. But turned, she seemed young. Well, anyone in their 20s would seem young to someone in their late 30s like me. She appeared to be putting on a brave face, and I worried that she might be pushing herself too hard. That instant left a strong impression on me. A week later, on my day off, Mary came to visit my apartment. She brought a box of cookies as a gift.
I wanted to apologize for the trouble.
No worries. That's an emergency situation. Are you feeling better now?
Yes, thanks to you. Turns out it was just a cold. Please take care of yourself too. Johnson.
She said so and left. It wasn't really appropriate to invite her to stay and chat as she was just recovering from being ill. But from that point on, my rather gloomy life began to change for the better.
Hi, Johnson. How are you today?
Apparently, she'd always been a bit hesitant to talk to me because I always seemed so busy and stressed out. But now it seems she started trusting me more. And thanks to Mary's approach, the way the rest of the staff treated me also began to change. Especially the seasoned workers. Their attitude towards me did a complete 180. This factory, somewhat reminiscent of a small factory in a rural area, had only a few workers. Because of that, the workers were very close, almost like family. Before, there seemed to be an invisible barrier between me and the rest, but soon, they started offering me coffee, and the baseless rumors about me stopped. We even began to chat casually, which surprised me. Because to be honest, my work performance wasn't that great. I decided to ask a veteran worker, Joe, about it.
You helped Mary, right? Mary told us. Even said you're not like the rumors made you out to be.
According to Joe, Mary, being the youngest worker at the factory, was beloved by all. That's why her words had such an impact on him.
First I about before, but she chased ran away. Before you were assigned here, some guy from headquarters spread all these bad rumors about you.
I was shocked. Turns out the one who framed me, Mike, had spread rumors even here. Joe didn't know Mike by name, but from the description, it was definitely him. I sighed and explained my side of the story to Joe.
How I was sidelined from my promising career path and ended up here because of Mike's schemes.
One was talking. I suddenly heard a voice from behind me. What? That's horrible. Was turning around. I saw Mary, her clothes stained with oil. She seemed to have overheard our conversation.
You should get back at that guy. Johnson,
You're surprisingly fierce, I think, Cavs. It's impossible, but I'm just a factory manager now.
Goddamn is so slow at learning the ropes. Isn't?
Mocked by Joe. I found myself at a loss for words. It's been known among the workers that I hadn't been properly trained lately. I've been gradually getting the hang of my duties, but it's true, I've still been holding the team back. So if I talked to someone higher up, they'd listen.
Oh, let me at you, guy.
I said that half jokingly. It's unthinkable that someone above me would intervene on my behalf. That's what I believed, anyway. But to my surprise, my joke became reality. A few weeks after our conversation, the CEO of the company unexpectedly showed up at the factory. It's incredibly rare for the CEO to come to such a remote place like this. Usually, it's only up to the level of a department head. Still, I was seriously flustered. Did I screw up big time to have the CEO come down here?
I felt absolutely crushed. But as soon as the CEO arrived, he said, "I'm sorry. It's Johnson, the Mexican. You've been treated unfairly." He bowed his head to me.
And awesomeness, Mish, would just cheat us. What? Yes, husband.
Also, I was shocked. I listened to what the CEO had to say. Apparently, he'd received a report from someone about Mike's wrongdoing. Upon investigation, it was revealed that Mike had been maliciously sabotaging my performance evaluations and stealing credit from other employees. I'd always thought of Mike as competent, but it turns out he was just stealing others' achievements.
Mike is currently suspended for serious draft. Brother-led. We're considering disciplinary actions. But first, we want to sort out your situation. Ideally, I'd like to transfer you back to the head office immediately so I'm legally way.
Oh my Duncan, and it just won't shit right.
I interrupted the CEO because I thought he wanted to transfer me back.
And the time as body spark none. I will stay here.
Why decision to costume
I've just started to get the hang of things here and earn some recognition.
Sure, I'm not perfect yet, but even Joe has told me that I finally am made the grade. Back at the head office, I was solely focused on climbing the corporate ladder. I used to think that the only proof of being acknowledged was to move up, but there's more to it. The importance of building relationships, being genuinely acknowledged by your colleagues, these are things I probably wouldn't feel at the head office. Without realizing, I'd grown fond of everyone at this rural factory and the environment here. So, I wasn't ready to leave just yet. Besides, the head office didn't seem all that appealing anymore, especially since they failed to spot Mike's deceit. Rather than hustling in the high turnover environment of the head office, I wanted to settle here. That's my honest feeling now.
Don't give me my eyes here.
Once I firmly conveyed my wish to the CEO, the transfer was off the table.
A CEO left after saying, "Keep up the good work." I was questions started to nag at me.
I couldn't forgive what Mike did, but who reported in? Someone with a grudge. Lost in thought, someone tapped on my shoulder. It was Mary.
Hey Johnson, how are you?
God guns to you, thanks.
How did it go? Did that guy Mike, who framed you, get punished?
When Mary asked me that, I was taken aback. I wondered how she knew about that. My face must have given away my surprise.
Mary laughed. I told my dad, you got transferred here by a bad employee at the headquarters.
You died. You just died.
Yes, my dad is the CEO who was here earlier.
So what? I couldn't help but shout in surprise.
Seeing my reaction, Mary laughed out loud. Haha, only you didn't know.
The CEO's daughter, which means you are in harassed. But shouldn't you be working at the headquarters? Why are you here at this factory? I was utterly baffled. Mary then explained the situation. She's not good at administrative tasks, especially dislikes computers. Unusual for a woman, she loves tinkering with machines and was planning to work at another company's factory.
But her father, the CEO, strongly opposed it, saying factories can be dangerous with frequent injuries. If you want to work with machines, then work at our factory.
That's how she ended up working at this factory, which was run by a friend of the CEO. By the way, that friend is the guy who always teases me, Joe. No wonder she calls him so closely.
My dad probably thought I'd leave this remote place quickly, but I've always wanted to live in the countryside, so I settled right in. She continued with a chuckle. You were kind to me when I had a fever and made adjustments so I wouldn't overexert myself. Not just for me, but you also considered the well-being of other workers. Thanks to you, everyone says it's easier to work here now.
This made me feel mixed emotions. Injuries and accidents are likely to occur in factories. If something happened, the procedures for workers' compensation are troublesome. This is also one of the reasons why I'm concerned about it. It might be a bit self-serving, but if it makes it easier for the workers, well, it's okay.
That's why I talked to my dad about you. It was my way of thanking him for helping me when I had the fever.
I could only shrug at her words. It's quite the hefty way of expressing gratitude, but if that's how she feels, I'm happy. Although I'm a little worried that the CEO might hear about future issues, but I declared in front of the CEO that I want to work here. Half-hearted results won't cut it. But for the sake of those who believed in me, I'll work even harder, and with that determination, 5 years have passed. Right now, I'm a middle-aged factory manager in my 40s. The once run-down factory underwent several renovations in these 5 years, and now it's a cleaner environment with more workers. The costs went up, but the productivity doubled. Thankfully, the factory turnaround was a success. It wasn't just my effort, thanks to Joe and, of course, Mary's encouragement, because this factory has a lot of Mary fans.
When she says, let's do our best, everyone works incredibly hard.
Well, me included. Even after 5 years, she's still a bit clumsy, often tripping or getting her face dirty with grease. Yet her positivity has been a big help, and I respect her as an individual. Simply put, I've grown fond of her. I mean, who could blame me? Her smile is charming, and well, I've seen her underwear in those moments. What color is it today? Any guy would wonder. She's constantly on my mind. Ah, please, man, I'm pathetic. I've never even been able to ask her out on a date. But today is different for me. I felt this way for 5 years, and today I finally mustered up the courage to ask her out for dinner, but...
Ah, is this a date? It is a date, right? Victory. It was pretty obvious what I was getting at.
And it wasn't just her who figured it out. And the whole factory knew. Am I really that transparent? I was so embarrassed. I thought, there's nothing more embarrassing than this, and confessed to her without even waiting for our date. I like you. Will you be my girlfriend?
When I said that, she smiled and replied, yes, I. I've always remembered how you didn't take advantage of me when I was vulnerable in your apartment. Instead, you were genuinely concerned.
Wait, take advantage?
Well, wouldn't most find that situation risky? I was really lucky.
I agree with her, but hearing it out loud was unsettling. Probably just the youthful impulsiveness talking, but that youth can be blinding. I always felt I need to be there to protect her. With that thought, we dated and eventually got married. We had a tight-knit workplace, so everyone congratulated us. Now, Mary is 28 years old and expecting. At first, I regretted being relocated to Nebraska, but now I see it's not so bad. Probably owe it all to Mary's positive outlook. Freed from the hustle and bustle of New York, now we get to spend quality time together. We're expecting our child next month, so our family is growing. I look forward to that as I head to work today. Hope you enjoyed this little story. Subscribing to our channel really motivates us to create more content. See you in the next video. There's a saying, it's too late to regret, but honestly, all regrets are too late anyway. I am Kevin Thompson, and I have deep regrets that linger in my heart, so profound that I sometimes wish I could turn back time. This year, as I turned 36, I'm currently in charge of the only clinic on a remote island. As before this, I worked in a clinic in a secluded mountainous area. Back then, it was more or less an assignment from my higher-ups, but moving to this island was a choice I made on my own. This marks my 6th year here. During the summer, the town is bustling with tourists and surfers, but it's pretty quiet off-season. Summer is just around the corner. The entire atmosphere of the island will soon shift, welcoming its lively season. During the off-season, I mainly work as a family physician for the island residents, but as the number of tourists increases, we start to get a variety of patients. There's only one nurse. Her name is Catherine, a seasoned professional who's 58 this year. She's been both a professional mentor in healthcare and a life mentor to me, supporting me in many ways. She's like a mother figure to me here on the island. Having spent 6 years on this island, I've come to know almost every resident. There are also young folks who have returned to the island from big cities, and the local youth group, somewhat like a community club, is quite vibrant these days. I'm also a member and during summer festivals or other events. I'm usually on standby at the first aid tent. With summer approaching, it means the festival is near. Looking at the calendar on the wall, I remembered there's a meeting for the youth group tonight. Today there hasn't been a single patient since morning. Be also questions or illnesses, which is always a blessing. I haven't received any surgery requests from the university hospital, which used to be frequent. Recently, things have been really peaceful. Even if I were to spend the rest of my life in this clinic on this island, I don't think I'd have any regrets. The venue for the youth group meeting is a pub owned by the president and his wife. They serve fresh morning caught fish at incredibly affordable prices. Being terrible at cooking, this place is where I eat most of my dinners. When I first arrived, I used to live on instant noodles, and they told me a doctor shouldn't neglect his own health, and insisted I'd eat in here. The pub has a spacious room upstairs, and that's where the youth group meetings are held. Usually, the folks who never gather on time were exceptionally early today. Moreover, all the young guys were dressed rather sharp, looking different from their usual selves. I thought the atmosphere felt off, but I took a seat on one of the available chairs. Once everyone was present, the president began explaining about the summer fair. It's the same as every year, no changes. Most of the people here experienced last year's fair, so it felt more like a refresher. Once the meeting concludes quickly, it turns into a dinner party. I bet most attend these meetings for the fun of this party. It's also a chance for everyone to share local news, so everyone finds it valuable. Just as the draft beer was served, the private room's door opened hesitantly. Issuing while calling out was an unfamiliar woman. I doubt she's a local. Michelle, over here. The president beckoned her. She navigated through the crowd and took a seat beside him. Her brightly colored hair was loosely tied back, and her slender neck was striking. Her face, slightly sunburned, was blushing. She appeared delicate, but her posture revealed strong core muscles.
Everyone, this is Michelle, Bob's cousin. I gets right in this butcher theory, Brasher. He started working at Bob's surf shop a week ago.
After a brief introduction, Michelle gave a small nod. She had a refined face resembling an actress, and had recently started working at one of the few surf shops. Looking around, all the young men seemed smitten by her. That's when I realized they dressed up, because they knew Michelle would be here. And not my place to interfere in young love, but from what I saw, none of them seemed on pair with her. I sensed this summer would be quite an eventful one. After the introduction, Michelle was immediately surrounded by the youth and continuously offered drinks. She seemed to struggle a bit to decline, probably not much of a drinker. I watched and leisurely sipped from my glass. Of course it's filled with ginger ale. There's only one doctor on this island. I can't afford to get drunk, while the others were enthusiastically mingling. I was discussing finer details with the president. Hey doctor, so about Michelle. I'd like you to keep an eye on her a bit. Seems like there's some backstory with her. Backstory? I asked back, the president looking serious and nodded. Bob had directly consulted the president. Apparently, Julia Michelle has a bedridden younger brother. She came to this island out of her brother's wish to give her a break from taking care of him all the time. He wanted her to enjoy her life. Just imagining how Michelle must have felt when her brother told her that. It hurt deep inside me.
I don't think she'd do anything reckless, but to keep an eye on her, okay.
The president gently patted my shoulder, getting up from his seat. And then he brought Michelle from the group and had her sit beside me. Michelle took a seat on the cushion with a slight sigh of relief.
They made me drink a lot.
Seeing her smile, I blurted out, "What?" You from that time, looking at my surprised face. Michelle giggled mischievously.
I thought I'd meet you again.
She teased me with a slightly cheeky tone. And then she whispered in my ear, "I'm still wearing that swimsuit you picked up for me." Cheesery. Hearing that made her appear a bit sultry. Just when I thought I was past such feelings, it turns out I'm still a ma'am. The very daring swimsuit she referred to from that day. She said she's still wearing it. Hard not to imagine it. Michelle seemed to enjoy my flustered state, which was a bit frustrating.
You've heard my introduction, right? I wanted to ask back then, but couldn't. Who are you?
Considering the time, I was most likely the first person to talk to Michelle on this island. I had mistaken her for an off-season tourist then.
I'm a doctor at the local clinic here. Call me Kevin. If you get injured or feel unwell, don't hesitate to contact me.
Upon hearing my words, Michelle tensed up a bit.
Huh. Any chance you're connected with that university hospital?
She mentioned the name of the university hospital I was once affiliated with.
Used to be Pasagapado. Now I mainly focus on rural practice.
On hearing this, Michelle glared at me with intense eyes. The good vibe from a moment ago disappeared, and tension filled the room.
From the university hospital? Kevin Thompson?
Well, you know my surname. I like giving my first name.
The fact that Michelle knows my full name means there's some connection somewhere, but I couldn't remember it all.
But met some people somewhere before.
Just as I was about to ask her, Michelle suddenly stood up and left the private room with great momentum. Her back seemed filled with anger. The eyes of blame were on me following Michelle's abrupt exit. They must think I said something to upset her.
Oh, I know podcast, Slicky. I didn't say anything drawn to Irie or you.
The community group looked at me disapprovingly, and I found myself defensively speaking out. After that, I was surrounded and blamed by the group. A week has passed since the meeting, and I still can't remember where I met Michelle. Even if we run into each other in town, she'll blatantly avoids me, not even making eye contact. Her profile clearly indicates a big dislike sign. I can't imagine getting into this kind of situation without a significant reason. She seems to get along with everyone else, so it's not that she dislikes this island. She definitely dislikes me, but before I introduced myself, her attitude seemed rather friendly. She totally changed her attitude after hearing my name.
Doctor, it seems you're quite disliked.
Touching her mark. Word spread quickly around the island that Michelle didn't like me.
It's not just dislike, it's more like...
What do you mean?
Interrupted by Catherine, I voiced the words I hadn't shared with anyone.
It's not just dislike. It feels like she deeply loathes me.
When I let out my pent-up feelings, I felt it relieved. The way Michelle looks at me isn't just a dislikes or hats kind of look. It's a look filled with deep resentment and loathing. That's 6 years in my life, I've never been so openly antagonized. It's not mere jealousy or sarcasm. It's pure hatred and animosity. Though exhaust, I can't remember why. It's like I've forgotten something vital. I start to feel really sorry towards Michelle. I wish I'd confront and apologize to her. I let out a big sigh.
Well, it'll all work out in the end. If you keep looking gloomy, your patients will get worried.
Pressed oranged by Catherine's words, I nodded firmly.
You're absolutely right, as you kept burst TUT pride. It's pretty unprofessional of me to be down about something like this.
The words unprofessional doctors that I muttered kept echoing in my heart. As summer vacation starts, the island becomes bustling. Families and surfers begin pouring into the island. It clansons in bed, and breakfasts are swamped, and the normally quiet town is filled with unfamiliar faces. With a temporary increase in the island's population, even the usually laid-back clinic gets busy. We get a lot of tourists who are unfamiliar with the sea, getting stung by jellyfish or cutting their feet on rocky shores. Being busy keeps my mind off other things. I'd almost forgotten about Michelle for a while. I was so swamped that I felt it was a waste of time trying to remember what I couldn't. That day was hectic from the morning. Sure, a grade schooler with a stomachache to a college girl with a cut foot. Regular elderly patients visited the clinic daily. I barely had time for lunch, and things only settled down when afternoon consultations began. I ended up wolfing down a sandwich and starting the afternoon shift. Doctor, please help Michelle. The person who be barged in right as the afternoon consultation started was Bob, the owner of the surf shop. He's Michelle's cousin. Normally unflappable Bob looked panic-stricken.
What, Bennett?
I tried to answer calmly. Just then, Michelle, unable to walk and supported under both arms, was brought in. Her bleeding from the legs was severe, and her thigh looked like it had been gouged by rocks. She also had numerous scrapes and abrasions. Someone was pressing a towel to her wounds, but the towel was quickly turning bright red. She tried to help a student who was about to get caught in the rocks, and then during the surfing lesson, it seems she tried to help a student who was drifting toward the rocks and got hit by a massive wave. She must have been slammed against the rocks multiple times by the waves. On closer look, she was also bleeding from her arm. Thankfully, it didn't seem like she had broken any bones.
We need treat her right away.
As I directed her to be laid on the treatment bed, the until then compliant Michelle began to resist. I don't want you to treat me. That the atmosphere in the examination room became icy with her words. Michelle's shout was almost a scream. She must have been in pain. She kept wincing. Yet the glare she gave me was full of intensity. Are you crazy? Oh, you need to get treated ASAP. But Michelle wouldn't be convinced. She dug her nails into the arm of the guy, supporting her, and kept glaring at me. She was like a wounded stray cat. Her defense is up. She was trying hard to seem strong.
I don't care if you hate me or whatever. Just let me treat you as a doctor. That's my purpose in life.
I raised my voice in desperation, seeing the amount of blood flowing from her. Hearing my outburst, Michelle smiled faintly with a pale face. She looked eerily beautiful.
I'll utterly deny your worth in life.
She said with a mocking tone, then turned on her heel, heading for the clinic's exit. Her chilling words left me frozen in place. The smell of blood permeated the examination room.
You get treated. After some doctors aren't you?
Bob tried to stop her, but Michelle pushed his hand away. Why did she despise me so much? To the point of denying my worth as a doctor.
Why? Why do you reject me to this extent?
I can't just let Michelle leave like this. With a pleading tone, I called out to her retreating figure. Michelle halted for a moment. Without turning back, she began her story.
A long time ago, there was a skilled doctor in a rural clinic in a declining mountain area. A major hospital pleaded with him to perform surgery on my younger brother, but he walked out without operating.
Listening to Michelle's words, I was dumbfounded. I was so shaken, I could barely stand, collapsing to the floor.
My brother's name was Johnson, and the doctor's name? It was Dr. Kevin Thompson. I haven't forgotten it since that day.
After saying that with evident disdain, Michelle brushed past the attempts of Catherine and Bob to stop her and left the clinic. My head started pounding, and I couldn't even stand. The name of that patient, Johnson. Back in the day, I was transferred from a university hospital to a rural clinic in the mountains, and admittedly, I was a bit jaded. At that university hospital, I was rather arrogant, considering myself a cut above the rest of my peers. Being told to get experience in a remote mountain clinic didn't sit well with me immediately. Every time a complicated surgery was scheduled, being recalled from the mountain clinic to the university hospital was a hassle. Frankly, I was frustrated every day, and I was angered by the sense that the university hospital was exploiting me. The surgery on that day was for a boy in middle school. He had congenital heart and respiratory problems. If the surgery was successful, he'd get to lead a normal life. I assumed they went into the surgery with hopeful hearts. I realized that now. However, back then, I was full of pride. The surgery wasn't at the university hospital where I worked, but at another university hospital in a different state, requested by my home institution. But when I arrived there, I was met with an unbelievably rude young doctor, probably around my age, I guess. When I checked in and tried to visit the nurse's station to check on the patient, this doctor immediately confronted me. The doctor introduced himself as Mike and openly sized me up from head to toe. Being young and hot-headed myself, I took offense. Oh, so you work at that little mountain clinic? Why did you come down from the hills today? If you're here for observation, I'd prefer you pick another day, Mike said with a mocking laugh. I come to think of it, the primary doctor for the patient was named Mike. Realizing this smirking guy was the primary doctor made me feel even more irritated. I'm not here for observation. I'm here to work. Mike sarcastically remarked to me, look, the hillbilly's talking. That's his patient? He probably wanted to be the one performing the surgery. Seems like he's taking out his frustration on me, a total stranger. But judging by Mike's behavior, he doesn't seem to realize that I'm the lead surgeon. He's probably trying to chase me away, thinking I'm just some small-town doctor from the mountains. We have a top-notch surgeon coming in tomorrow. Small-town doctors like you should just scurry back to where you came from, Mike said, looking intently into my eyes and trying to intimidate me. Even after that, he kept mocking me by repeating as hillbilly and refused to listen to my explanation. Being young and prideful, I lost it. At that moment, I think I completely forgot about the patient. All I could think about was my wounded pride. I wanted to shout at him that the only reason I was there was because he wasn't skilled enough to handle the surgery, or come with anger. I lashed out at Mike. The only reason I'm here is because you don't have the skills for the surgery. If you're going to mock me so much, handle it yourself. Isn't he here your patient? Do your best. Get that. I turned on my heel and stormed off. How arrogant of me. Mike quickly followed, trying to apologize, ignoring him. I continued walking until suddenly, Mike stepped in front of me, kneeling down in the middle of the corridor, right there in the hallway of the university hospital. It was unheard of, a doctor kneeling down like that.
I'm sorry, truly. I'm here for that was made. It's for surgeries, for Chris surgery. Save him. I can't do it with my skills. Mike pleaded, his voice strained.
Even now, I remember that voice. It was a complete contrast from the arrogant doctor I saw earlier, showing a desperate Mike trying to fulfill his responsibility to his patient. Yet, I coldly trampled over Mike's feelings. It's a bit late, isn't it? Hang in there. I will be operating. I declared this while looking down at Mike, who was prostrating himself before me. Mike's hunched back trembled slightly. In the end, I didn't perform the surgery and went back to my own clinic. I prioritized my pride and left the patient, a regret I can never fully shake off. The surgery Mike later performed was a failure. The boy who only wanted a normal life ended up bedridden for life. Although it may sound arrogant, I believe there could have been a different future had I been the one to operate. I'm a failure as a doctor. Turns out, the patient was Michelle's younger brother. What a cruel joke fate plays. Michelle, who vehemently rejected my treatment. I'm a man who's basically negated his worth as a doctor. What should I do? I've pondered how to atone for a long time. I think one of the reasons I insist on practicing in remote, declining areas is as a form of penance. Since that incident, any ambition I once had has vanished completely.
Doctor, are you alright? Ekrin, seeing me slumped, voiced her concerns.
She doesn't know the details, but she's very perceptive. I'm sure she's pieced together why I came to this clinic and why I don't return to the university hospital. Yet she doesn't press for details. Catherine's kindness meant a lot to me today. In the end, Michelle never returned to the clinic and our office hours ended for the day. After closing, I reached out to Bob to check on Michelle. I was told she's locked herself in a room. I felt a bit relieved when I heard her injuries were at least treated, but one can't be too careful. Tonight, I can only hope nothing happens. I thought ending my call with Bob, the emergency alert on my cell phone went off late into the night. Having gone through so much, I was lying in bed, drifting in and out of light sleep.
Yes, is Kevin speaking. What's your emergency?
I try to make sure my voice doesn't sound groggy, speaking from my gut. Can't make the patients or their families feel uneasy.
Autistic spections. It's Michelle. She's really sick. Her fever's sky high.
It was Bob on the other end of the call. I immediately jumped out of bed and instructed him to bring Michelle to the clinic right away. I was told that Michelle, in her feverish state, was mumbling something about not wanting to go to the clinic. Without wasting a moment, I headed to the clinic on my moped. By the time I arrived, Catherine had already unlocked the front door for me. Lights were on. Everything was ready.
I'm sorry to call you at this hour.
Vince, to which Catherine replied with a gentle smile. It's our job after all.
The moment I was slipping into my lab coat, I heard the sound of a car pulling into the clinic's parking lot. It seemed Michelle had arrived. Both Catherine and I quickly rushed out to the parking lot. I approached the car and spoke to Michelle, who was slumped in the back seat. She seemed to be in great pain and didn't respond. She was drenched in sweat, obviously trying to bear the pain.
We need to get her inside now.
At my instruction, Bob lifted Michelle in his arms and carried her into the clinic. She didn't show the resilience she had earlier in the day. When I examined the wound in the examination room, it was swollen and hot. It looked like she might have caught some sort of infection.
I'll do an echo right now.
If it's tetanus, it could be serious. I began the treatment promptly, but as I did, Michelle, who had regained a bit of her consciousness, suddenly pulled her leg away.
I don't want you treating me.
In a raspy, low voice, she told me that, and frustration had me clenching my jaw tight. I wouldn't go back and punch the old me. I truly felt that way in that moment. Despite her glazed eyes from the high fever and pain, Shelka glared at me, resisting treatment. I fell to my knees right there and begged Michelle for forgiveness. That I was arrogant in the past, and as a doctor, I regret having done something so inexcusable. I tried to convey that with all my heart, seeing Michelle in pain right in front of me. I, who possessed the means to relieve her suffering, felt helpless. That realization brought tears to my eyes. If I can't do anything for my patient in front of me, what's the point of being a doctor?
I came to this clinic to escape. I did something terrible as a doctor and faced the worst consequences. Answered the cry as the traps. I couldn't give up being a doctor. I may be flawed, but I can help you now.
It might not look cool, but I pleaded with Michelle through my tears. Then, her once hostile eyes softened just a bit. Please let me treat you. Please tell me it's okay for me to be a doctor. My voice cracked, and I wasn't even sure she heard me at the end. But I was desperate. Michelle then suddenly extended her leg towards me. Treat me, it's unbearable. She spoke clearly. There she was looking away.
Certainly, thank you. I quickly wiped away my tears, got up, checked the wound, and then began the necessary treatments.
By the time the IV drip was done, Michelle's condition stabilized, and the painkiller medication put her to sleep, fixed listening to her steady breathing. I cherished the fact that I could treat her, that she allowed me to be a doctor. The next morning, I woke up feeling someone stroking my head. It was Michelle's slender fingers gently brushing through my hair. Thanks to apparently, I'd fallen asleep while checking on her. It's embarrassing for a doctor to fall asleep before the patient. However, her gentle touch felt so comforting. I pretended to sleep a little longer. I'm sure Michelle would forgive me. Thinking I was asleep, I could hear Michelle murmuring to herself, "Vicious, I wish he had been a more unpleasant guy. Why is he such a good person? Why was it him who picked up my bikini back then?" She murmured, her voice gentle with a hint of laughter. She's probably recalling that moment. The day I picked up Michelle's bikini. When I said, "You dropped something," I had thought she maybe dropped a handkerchief. Taking a closer look at what I had picked up, I unintentionally shouted and tossed it away like a hot potato. After all, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to touch it. Sure, a bright turquoise bikini. Michelle, looking very composed, grinned at my flustered self and said, "Interested? Wanna see me wear? I might show it to you, mister." In that moment, I fell in love. But now, feeling affection from Michelle's fingers running through my hair, I wonder, that's her Alpet. I'll open my eyes and ask her, "Did you fall in love with me back then too?" I wonder if she'll get angry or laugh. It might come off as self-centered, but I believe Michelle will laugh. I firmly believe that. How did you find today's story? Hitting the subscribe button and the like button helps motivate me to create more content. I'm also looking forward to reading your comments. See you in the next video. 3 night. I strain my ears to hear her voice, make a faint and secretive voice from the other side of the wall. I'm intrigued by that voice from the thin wall every evening. What kind of secrets is she hiding? Ah, look. I can hear it faintly again tonight. I press my ear against the wall to listen to her secretive voice. My name is Chris, and I'm turning 28 this year. I work for an IT startup. I chose this company because I was impressed by the CEO who founded it. He started the company when he was in college. In no time, he rose to the top of the industry. Of course, he's good at his job, but I think his charismatic nature is what really draws people in. I would say that he is a people person. When the CEO convinces you of something, it's hard to resist. I looked up to him. Someday, I wanted to start my own company, just like him, and rule from the top. That was my goal. I've been working hard, and people inside the company think pretty highly of me. The outside, a few folks recognize my name. I'm always grateful because I feel the CEO favors and supports me. Then one day, the CEO personally called me in. I thought he had a new job for me, so I kept my spirits up before entering his office. After knocking, I heard his voice saying, "Come in," but with a large window behind him, the CEO sat looking confident. I thought, as in, he really does look cool. "Chris, I have a job for you," he began without any preamble. "If it's something I can do, I'll give it my all," I replied. The CEO seemed pleased with my response. Of course, he probably never expected me to answer any differently. "I think everything's going just as he predicted. I want you to get married. I was taken aback by the CEO's words. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what he just said. It's a fake marriage just for a year or so, and of course you can't get involved with a woman. If you can manage this, I'll give you the position that you want. While I was still in shock, the CEO began to lay out the conditions of the task. I understood that if I maintained this fake marriage for a year, I'd get the position I desired. It's a task only you can handle. Will you do it? He said with a solid tone. Didn't expect any refusal. I doubt anyone in the company could stand up to the CEO when he's this determined.
Understood. With other women.
I replied, trying to stay as calm as possible. The CEO then made a call to summon someone. Since it's an internal line, it means the woman is an employee yet at our company. I had a hunch at this point. There's been talk of a woman rumored to be the CEO's mistress within the company. Of course, the CEO is a married man. I'm just being used as a diversion. After a polite knock, the person who walked in was just who I had suspected. An accountant named Catherine. I believe she's about a year older than me. For a startup employee, she's quite plain and unremarkable.
Jessica's agreed to everything. Catherine, you'll marry Chris. Traverse.
Out with the CEO's words. Catherine quietly nodded.
She looked at me, tilted her head slightly, and said, "Pleased to be working with you."
I couldn't read anything from that expression. It wasn't emotionless, but I couldn't tell what she was thinking. That's how I ended up as the guy who won the CEO's mistress after a secret office romance. I thought the fake marriage would be just about living together, but we actually got legally married. But in full the HR department, the CEO provided a new apartment and furnished it entirely for us. It's a marriage with all the bells and whistles. I decided to keep it a secret from my parents for now. I'll just wing it if they ever find out. It'll be just a year. They probably won't hear about it in my hometown out of state. The CEO's order was to divorce after about 6 months to a year, probably when his wife's suspicions clear up. It's a fake marriage, so we have separate rooms. No intimacy allowed. Just like roommates. We didn't have a wedding ceremony, just took photos. She looked surprisingly beautiful in her white dress, which was a shock. But the thick glasses she usually wears were the problem. I didn't know her real face until we took the photos, because on our first night as a married couple, she bowed her head to me slowly.
"I'm truly sorry for all the trouble because of John's whims. Please bear with it for a while."
John is the CEO. His full name is Jonathan. I figured, so the rumors about him having a mistress were true.
All I could say was, "Oh, okay."
If I can endure for half a year to a year, my promotion is guaranteed. But I wonder if she's promised something after that time. Does she intend to always live in the shadows? Such deep thoughts crossed my mind, but I tried not to dwell on it. I didn't want to get too involved. That's on the third night of our fake marriage. I woke up in the middle of the night. The beer I had before bed made me thirsty. I left my room to get water from the fridge in the kitchen. The hallway was pitch dark and silent. Then I heard a faint whisper. It was so soft I couldn't make it out clearly. A truly secretive voice. It took me a moment to realize it was Catherine's voice, because the voice was so unbelievably gentle, speaking softly with someone while occasionally laughing. "John, don't laugh too much or he'll wake up." It seemed Catherine was on the phone with the CEO. Currently, it's 2:30 in the morning. They sure seem like they're sneaking around. I tried my best to walk down the hallway without making any noise. I didn't want to rudely interrupt their moment. Playing the role of a husband in a fake marriage is no walk in the park. I sighed. I eavesdropped on Catherine and the CEO's whispered conversation through the thin wall. I know it's ethically wrong, but this has become a habit of mine. Akan and I continued our fake marriage. We barely talk, even when we're both home. It's not out of boredom, but I'd like to dip my toes into their secret world every now and then. Maybe I could find some weakness in the CEO. Information is power in this world. The more you know, the closer you are to winning. Tonight, the two of them started their whispered conversation again. Then through the wall, I could hear Catherine's voice, full of compassion. Of course, I couldn't hear the CEO's voice. However, her comforting words seemed to be constantly cheering him up, and they also healed me.
"Are you okay? Are you tired? Are you eating properly?" Such simple and kind words. I wonder if he was trying to make her laugh, but she giggled quite a bit. Even though they were in a relationship, I never heard them say "I love you." It was just her constantly worrying about him and cheering him up. It's a strange kind of affair.
The change in our pretend marriage came about a month after our wedding. She figured out that I had been eavesdropping on her conversations with the CEO. Like always, after she said goodnight, she hung up the phone. I thought I could just go to bed. Suddenly, Catherine's voice echoed through the wall. I froze on the spot, not sure how to respond. I considered playing dead, but Catherine delivered the coup de grace.
Chris, we need to talk.
I gave in, leaving my room for the living room. Catherine followed shortly after. I braced myself for a confrontation, ready to apologize. I looked up but was momentarily stunned. Caught off guard, I forgot my apology and just stared. She was wearing what seemed to be her high school tracksuit, an emblem and a name embroidered on the matching top and bottoms. And she was wearing even thicker black-rimmed glasses than she had during the day. It was quite a surprising look after their intimate conversations. I was expecting something more seductive, but this had zero appeal. In front of the flabbergasted me, Escan quickly brewed some tea for us.
Eavesdropping is not acceptable. It's against the rules, isn't it?
I was accused, and it irked me. Breaking the rules. A fake marriage is also breaking the rules. Hell, having an affair might as well be breaking the rules. To hear a breaking the rules from your lips. Buttering, you sure can say that with a straight face. I intended to apologize, but ended up making a sharp retort. I guess the stress of this fake marriage had been building up. It's not entirely Catherine's fault, but I felt like all the blame was on her. I greatly admire the CEO. The CEO is not at fault. I'm well aware this is a biased opinion.
I follow my own rules.
She said it so firmly that I was left speechless. She gestured for me to sit on the living room couch. I sat in silence, facing her directly. It was the first time I'd really looked at her since this fake marriage began.
Please, no more eavesdropping. It's an invasion of privacy.
Hearing her straightforward point triggered me. I did agree to this fake marriage as a part of a deal with the CEO. They probably see me as a pitiful man who is lured by ambition. Perhaps I'm even looked down upon. Realizing this, I felt a mix of shame and unreasonable anger. I wanted to unleash all of my anger onto Catherine, who sat in front of me with a composed look. My clenched fists trembled with rage. Her matter-of-fact tone made my restraint fly out the window.
Why, Hasrams? How sure do you think you are, acting all high and mighty while being the CEO's mistress? Without this fake marriage, you wouldn't even have a place here.
I stood up abruptly, but she calmly looked up at me, lifting her chin just a bit. There was no emotion on her face. It seems my words didn't get to her at all.
As you probably laugh behind my back, thinking I'm a lowlife for accepting such a ridiculous deal for my own advancement, right? Why, I'm pathetic.
Pointing on. I was practically full with rage. This fake marriage made me despise myself for the first time. I feel like such a fool. Indeed, all the words that I lashed out at Catherine were what I wanted to hurl at myself.
You should be proud of yourself. Krisk, you accepted the dirty job based on your beliefs. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
She said, looking me straight in the eyes. From her tone and sincere expression, I could tell she wasn't just trying to console me with empty words. Her words deflated my anger instantly, and I was taken aback.
Chris, you're a man of conviction.
Feeling weak in the knees, I sat back on the couch. How did she know exactly what I needed to hear? I'm sorry. I took out my frustrations on you. When you think about it, Catherine is also a victim of the CEO's ego. Seeing her serious face, I began to calm down.
You've heard the rumors about me and the CEO, haven't you? It seems his wife found out about them.
Catherine explained everything step by step. I hadn't heard any details from the CEO. She took the initiative to talk to me, thinking it would be stressful for me in such a situation. It seems the CEO had Catherine and me enter into a fake marriage to deceive his wife. If we went as far as getting married, suspicions would naturally be cleared. It's apparently a matter of patience until his wife lets her guard down.
Why can't you just one thing?
If I can answer it.
I posed a question that had been on my mind for a long time.
Is the CEO's mistress?
There are indeed rumors in the company that the two of them are in a romantic relationship. But that's based on minor things, like seeing them walking closely together or meeting privately. There's no concrete proof of a romantic relationship. I wanted to clear this up. Catherine looked slightly troubled by my question. She seemed to be pondering the best way to answer. Opening her mouth, then closing it again, she hesitated. How can I put this to make it clear to you? I'm not sure if I'd call it a romantic relationship. However, I do feel that the CEO looks out for me. I felt there wasn't a trace of deceit in her carefully chosen words. I realized she responded sincerely to my question. I see. Thank you for sharing. Here's a suggestion from me. Since it's a fake marriage, why don't we try to enjoy it a bit? Catherine looked genuinely surprised by my proposal. I've never seen her with such a shocked expression. She looked adorable, like a surprised squirrel. Oh, I don't mean it in a weird way. I'm talking about enjoying our pretend married life. It'd be tough to keep using formal language with each other for 6 months, especially since we work together. Being distant might come off as odd, don't you think? Catherine listened to my pitch with a tilted head. Then, with a chuckle, she extended her right hand.
Well, let's make the best of it, shall we, husband?
When I shook her hand, it was small, and it gave me a slight thrill. Ever since that night where we had an honest conversation, the distance between Catherine and I has been rapidly shrinking. We commute together, and I eat the lunch she prepares for me. When one of us has to work late, we let each other know. Whoever has more free time handles the chores. Living together, you get to see sides of her you wouldn't have known at the office. Just like how she burns her tongue easily or hates mushrooms. Or how she's not the best at folding laundry. Or how she dreams of adopting a kitten from a rescue center. I love watching her laugh out loud at comedy shows by my side. But that's where my exclusive time with her ends. Late at night, she gets calls from the CEO. Whenever the phone rings, she retreats to her room for a private conversation with him. I feel completely left out. Every day, the nights feel lonelier and it bothers me. The CEO remains unchanged. He treats both me and her the same way as before. I was getting a bit irritated by his attitude. Did he really trust her, or did he not think for a moment that she could fall for me? By the time half a year had passed, I realized I was in love with Catherine, but in her heart, there was only room for the CEO. I was fully aware of that, somewhere yet. I couldn't let go of that slight hope. I was told that this fake marriage would last between 6 months to a year. I was surprised at myself for wishing this life would go on forever. Time has passed, and it was halfway through our fake marriage. Catherine and I had a rhythm, understanding each other's likes and dislikes, much like a real couple. On weekends, she'd join me in my passion for outdoor activities, even trying camping for the first time. But now, she's eager to try solo camping. Lately, we've spent every weekend shopping at outdoor stores. For me, I've become a fan of the tea she brews after meals. She looks so dignified and beautiful, gracefully preparing her tea. When I expressed a desire to learn the art of tea making, she introduced me to a class, and now we attend together. After our tea class, we always grab some burgers together. She gets as excited as a child when I take her to a new tasty spot. I wish this happy life would continue forever. Just when I started to wish from the bottom of my heart, something happened. At my office desk, I was occupied with loads of work. But today, I had plans to dine out with her. There's no way I could work late. That's when I spotted her, sneaking between the desks. In her hands she held an envelope and a list, probably collecting money for some occasion. Whenever there's something to celebrate or mourn at the office, Akarin, being in accounting, collects the funds. It was a familiar sight. I'm sorry for interrupting your work. I'm here to collect some money. She stood next to my desk. Is someone getting married, or did something unfortunate happen? I asked her while searching for my wallet. I could sense a hint of tension in her posture. She was behaving differently, so I looked up. Her face was as expressionless as always, but now I could tell she was desperately hiding her emotions. The CEO's wife is pregnant, so it's a celebration. My hand jerked in surprise, dropping my wallet. Coins scattered on the floor with a clinking sound. The CEO's baby? But Catherine bent down to carefully pick up the coins. Well, the CEO has been married for 5 years now. It's about time, right? It's wonderful news, she said flatly, placing the coins gently in my palm. I'll come back later to collect. Take your time, she said and left, her retreating figure looking smaller than ever. I turned her back. Anger towards the CEO welled up in me. He tricked Catherine, pretending to be loyal to his wife. All the while, Catherine had been waiting for him. What's the point of our fake marriage? I was suddenly filled with resentment towards the CEO. I need to talk to him. I headed towards the CEO's office. Just as I was about to knock, the CEO's secretary opened the door.
He looked surprised and said, "Perfect timing."
Apparently, he was about to call me. Nodding to the secretary, I entered the CEO's office. The The CEO seemed just as I remembered him. Recognizing me, he gestured for me to come closer.
You've worked hard till now. I've arranged the position you wanted. The fake marriage is over, he said.
Then, he handed me something. Sure, a name tag with a new title on it. Among my colleagues, it was an unbelievably rapid promotion. And it was everything I had aimed for since joining the company.
Aren't you going to be more excited? Now you can finally date freely. Plus, with this position, you'll have your pick of the ladies, right?
The CEO teased. However, his eyes aren't laughing.
You're no longer needed. I'll be taking Catherine back.
Anger surged as the words left the CEO's mouth. Catherine isn't an object. The way the CEO casually mentioned taking her back's infuriated me. Isn't she free to live her life? Do you plan on keeping her trapped and making her suffer forever? It was the first time I'd ever stood up to the CEO. But I felt that I had to say something.
Pretty noble words coming from a guy who faked a marriage for a position.
The CEO laughed sarcastically, looking at me with disdain. I might have been intimidated before, but not now. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I don't need this position because I have no intention of divorcing her. She's already my wife. Staring down the CEO, I blurted out my words. The CEO frowned in displeasure.
Who do you think you are? You think you earned this position by yourself and that you can have Catherine too? Get over yourself.
The CEO yelled at me.
If you want divorce, you're fired. Can you really give up the position you wanted so desperately? You've always been so ambitious.
The CEO and I locked eyes, tension filling the room. Then, without a knock, the door to the CEO's office swung open.
Len, don't my feelings matter to you?
It was Catherine. Her face wasn't its usual expressionless self. Her face crumpled, tears shimmering in her eyes.
Catherine, could it be you too?
The CEO's voice hardened at Catherine's expression.
I won't divorce. I no longer need your protection. Etchton, you have a duty to make your wife happy.
With that, she turned and gave me a smile. I was taken aback and speechless. It was the first time I heard her true feelings.
Chris respects my freedom. He teaches me new things and tries to share the same view as me. I don't want to wait anymore for what's to be given.
The CEO, after hearing her words, slumped into his chair and held his head.
Why, dear Ron? You said you wanted me to wait, so I did without laying a hand on you. I even approached a fake marriage to protect you. Why I want here? Are you claimed you banned me too, or squassered?
She seemed to chew on the CEO's groaning words.
Chin, you have to realize, I'm just a convenient little sister figure for you, right? It's also hard for me to continue deceiving you with kind gestures.
The CEO looked up at her, his eyes resembling those of a forsaken child.
I will become Chris's wife, a real wife through sickness and old age, always together.
She smiled and I nodded strongly.
Thank you for everything, CEO.
I bowed to the man I'd always admired.
Help them, yeah, get out, you way gork did you have my shoes out. Else don't show your faces again. Sure, but I'm. Leave the apartment as soon as possible, till it's through to ruin. Better.
Energetically replied. Sure. Shoot.
As we exited his office, we heard the CEO's muffled cries from behind the door. Thus Catherine and I then resigned together and quickly moved out of the apartment.
I'm glad that it was you that I married for the fake marriage.
She said this as we left the building.
Let's look forward to starting today. To shipper that way.
The pleasure is all mine, my sweetie.
She whispered into my ear, making me jump. I blushed, covering my ears, and Catherine burst into laughter. It seems Catherine always had the upper hand. I had a feeling I'd be under her thumb, but I thought it would be fun as long as I'm with her. I may have lost the career success I'd dreamed of, but I'd gained something much more precious. I believe I'm the real winner in life.
She laughed and said, I'm counting on it.
I'm willing to bet my entire life on meeting her expectations.